Swallow, with it being Swallow. Her nickname in the streets is no lie Swallow. You can't make this up. So does anyone remember Air Gear? It was Ōgure's and Kodansha's manga award-winning shonen back in 2006. This show feels very nostalgic to me, like I'm back in 2000s era and I'm watching some 4Kids on a Saturday morning. You know, back in the day when they would be airing their anime blogs. It really reminds me of the early days of Bleach where they had the openings, you know, including a soundtrack with a mixture between electro dance music, drum and bass rap, rock, and alternative rock. And call me old, but I really do miss this style of music from a more comedic style driven anime. Air Gear was adapted into a 25-episode television anime series by Toei Animation, which aired on TV Tokyo from April to September in 2006. ADV Films announced on the October 20th, 2006 weekend at Onicon that they had the license to Air Gear and they plan to release it in North America. The first volume was released on February 6, in 2007. ADV released the uncensored Japanese home video version rather than the broadcast version, and when it was time to air it on IGN to give a sneak peek of the first episode, with this being the English dub, the show was uncensored for the English dub, so there was no way parents would actually let their kids watch it. So this is probably why they didn't air it on 4Kids at the time, and they had to air it on the unpopular way of doing it, being streaming it on Funimation, losing a lot of potential eyeballs that a lot of kids would have had on it. If you were a kid at the time, a new fad was sweeping the nation, with this being gang culture. In the plot of the show, gangs started to form all over to compete in various events using ATs. Air Gear is basically aggressive futuristic rollerblading, where people would race and do cool flips. It sounds like a more dangerous versions of Heelys that I had growing up. Iki's a middle school boy who's the toughest street fighting punk this side east of town. Being the only delinquent in the city that thinks riding ATs are lame. I shouldn't have to say it, but in the early 2000s, delinquent culture was a real thing. Yeah, I don't know when or where this picture is taken, but I don't care. The delinquent girls were hot. But at this time, a lot of the leading characters were tied into Japanese street culture or having references to them. Even Yugi Moto, the king of games, couldn't escape them. And I haven't even mentioned Season 0. With them only making recently a semblance of a comeback in the 2020s with Tokyo Revengers. Iki is voiced by Chris Patton, who's done Turles from Dragon Ball and Sosuke from Full Metal Panic, and he gives a rather serious performance, with the audience really feeling the weight of every line he gives, but he comes around to being more of the comedic, arrogant, headstrong leader we all know and love. Still, he's on the older side of what I think a middle school kid would sound like. I'm sure if I had that voice, I'd win over all the girls in my class, or they'd have another reason to run away from me. Jokes aside, he's supposed to be 15, even though in the dub it says he's like 13. Iki lives with his 4 adopted gorgeous sisters, who took him in when he was a kid. But what Iki doesn't know is, these girls are a part of the most infamous AT gang this side of the East, Sleeping Forest, and it doesn't take long for Iki to learn more about the world of ATs, being air treks, and meeting a number of storm riders and allies along the way. So the show starts out with someone just ripping on this guitar, with that being from a rock band, Back On, who manages to mix in a rap performance, playing a memorable opening song, In Chain, while the cast of characters are just calmly skating, almost at peace. I'll just mention it one time here, but everyone who has listened to the soundtrack for Air Gear openly says it's just a classic. Like the soundtrack is like actually just goated. If you listen, you'll understand what I'm saying. So Iki's a typical delinquent who just loves to get into fights and pervy situations with his friends, that being Kazu and Onigiri, with these two not at all fitting the role of delinquents, like Iki does. One day after he's being beaten up by Masaki, he realizes that he can't beat anyone who has an air track. So after his older sister Rika punishes him for breaking one of their house rules, and him also failing to sneak a peek at them in the bath, he notices a bunch of warning signs on one of the rooms in the house. With him being the mischievous character he is, he obviously opens it up. To be honest, it's kind of weird. He's been living in this house for I don't know how long, and he's just now found this room and finds out this whole thing of ATs and his sisters being a part of Sleeping Forest. This is kind of, how do you being this oblivious to all this shit? That's the part that really gets me. But anyways, he opens it up and he finds a set of ATs, with there being parts and an emblem saying Sleeping Forest. After reading the instructions for the rollerblades and nearly dying in the process, he wanders to a shop and he meets an older Russian woman and an old man. The woman sees his emblem and assumes that he must be an apprentice of Sleeping Forest. She abruptly apologizes because she rudely remarked about his skills earlier, and then she calls the old man to take him to the meeting place. There he sees the girl he's been admiring for a very long time, Simka, who's joking about playing some reindeer games, where people would tag their emblem on her body, in suggestive ways. So of course, the boy wants to try this out. In the end, he's able to tag her, but this starts a turf war, with the gang that beat him up in the previous day being challenged. But the cops show up, and all the delinquents scatter, but Iki and Magaki still have some unfinished business, having to battle for the emblems. Iki doesn't understand what's so important about this Sleeping Force emblem, but he accepts it. Also, it's weird because some of these emblems are metal, but later on you see them like being kind of like stickers. So did he just get like a set of sticker emblems and he wears one of them like a pin? And if that's the case of them being stickers, couldn't they just be very easy to get around the town? You just pick them up and that's it. Whatever, they battle for it. And with the help of his sisters, with them being members of Sleeping Forest, he's able to win. And he's rewarded for his efforts by cleaning the toilets for a month and getting a beat down from his older sister. Iki is talented enough to do anything that he puts his mind to, choosing to ride his ATs, loving the feeling of flying. The show's first season is broken down into arcs, with the first being about Simka, being admittedly the reason why Iki was so motivated to learn how to use ATs, with Simka being played by Monica Ryle. She's causing problems and forcing Iki to get better, offering to give the boy a reward a teenage boy would love, that being kisses, boob hugs, and her overall body, at multiple points in the first arc. Side note, I was dying laughing knowing her nickname in the show, with it being Swallow. Her nickname in the streets is no lie Swallow. You can't make this up. And you could say it means like the bird, but nah, the creator knows exactly what the heck he was doing when he was making this ecchi anime. He did that on purpose. Not to mention, Ringo is constantly saying how much he hates Simka for being so slutty. But Simka does this all to push him to reach his potential to become the Sky King so that he can ride alongside her. But her idea of love at the beginning was mainly to use him as a pet, pushing him to follow her decisions, shifting her idea of the boy later on, but still being as forward as she was at the beginning of the series, knowing if he joins her, he'd have to fight against his family and their ideology around ATs. Next is Ringo, being the smart, perfect student, but also being the stubborn, quick-tempered stepsister. For the most part, she's kind to everyone, except to Iki, and outwardly to Simka. Sits Simka and her different ideologies, and with her being a tsundere, she has a crush on Iki. With her being played by Lucy, it's hinted throughout the series that Ringo is the secret current leader of Sleeping Forest, who helps Iki get better, yes, but is the type of person to slowly ease him into training, as Simka outright just throws him into conflict. In season 1, she keeps the purpose of Sleeping Forest hidden and refuses to let Iki know anything about them, even though she's constantly meddling into the team's affairs, as if she's an unofficial member, even though he never asked for her help, nor did he ever really need it. Onigiri is played by Greg Aries, being the perverted, always fighting girls character that these shows typically have, who somehow comes across as lovable. Like in some scenes, I'm literally on the floor crying, or I'm downright just yelling at the screen, asking what the fuck is going on right now, especially with that girl in the thong dancing while fighting. I swear to God, it was the wildest shit I've ever seen in a dub. Then there's Kazu, played by Clint Brickham, who you could say is more level-headed, and he's constantly trying to prove himself, saying that he doesn't really need Iki to help him win a fight. But Kazu deep down runs away from a lot of conflict, but by the end he's able to overcome this, and find that he actually does do one thing better than Iki, which I guess was a bit of a motivational speech by Iki when he was talking about this, but it was still one of the most disrespectful backhanded compliments I've ever heard in a dub. Oh, next we got this fat son of a bitch, Isha, which is that character in the Too Mad Belle Delphine anime clip, who was the real king or delinquent of the school until Iki beat his team and he joined them later on. This character is literally just like Choji. He's literally just trying to eat the entire time, but he can still have abs if he wants to. Like I said, the comedy in his anime is crazy. So let me just explain a scene. These three idiots had this one scene with Onigiri's ex. And oh my gosh, on everything I love, this was the most goated, funny, what the fuck episode of all time in dub history. So I have to explain this. So Onigiri was gonna leave the team because he was gonna get into this aerobics class, which was filled from head to toe with baddies, and all in like their 20s and 30s. So of course, he chose to go with this stacked lineup over his homies. And Iki and Kazu are real. They saw the lineup and they understood this was the superior option. Of course they were mad. Onigiri's dating one of the girls from the class, and he wants to show her that he can take care of her if there ever came a dangerous situation. And kids, do not try this at home. So he hires Isha and his old squad to pose as some R-words, chasing her when she's in her skimpy outfit. See where I'm going with this? Onigiri steps in, and I kid you not, the dub had the hood translation on deck for Isha. Editor, make sure you edit this clip. I'ma need you to hand over that hoe, cause she coming with us. to play with my purple dinosaur, if you know what I mean. And this was all an act. So of course, Onigiri beats this nigga's ass. Iki and Kazu see what's going on from where they're at, and they realize it's obviously fake since they know Isha, but they want to show Onigiri that they're still friends. So all three of them stomp the shit out of Isha, but it turns out Onigiri's girl is a freak, being down to go with Isha, running into his arms. If any person saw this in real life, they understand that some crazy things are about to happen, and this girl was down for it. Like, she runs into this fat motherfucker's arms, and the reason why she left with Isha was because he was fatter than Onigiri, having a thing for the chubbiest man she can find. And then later on, in the hallway, when they're talking about Isha's girlfriend, he just breaks down and cries cause she left him for even fatter motherfucker, being a sumo wrestler. Yes, she got passed around so many times she ends up with a sumo wrestler, leaving both Onigiri and Isha in fucking shambles, proving once and for all, she's the real queen of the streets. After that detour, the next member we're talking about is Agito. Agito is played by Blake Shepard, and is a character with a split personalities. The aggressive one is needed for the races, of course, and the shy one being the one who has a crush on Iki, being the person Iki can rely on the most in a fight. Lastly, I gotta talk about would-be season 2 characters, and I'm gonna have to mention his sister slash mother, Rika, since she's the one who literally raised him like when he was a baby and they didn't have no parental figure around. Rika hates the idea of him having an air track team, afraid he's just gonna use it in the end of the fight, which based on his track record was pretty accurate. So she goes to talk to Sora, her innocent high school sweetheart who's stuck in a wheelchair, who got put in said wheelchair because he saved her life. Sora sides with Iki because she actually just won't talk to him about the situation, and she keeps just saying no.
Is that a fine piece of work or what? Huh?
Come on, man. Don't you know it's bad form to tell someone that his sister's ass is hot? Because if I say no, then I'm lying. But if I say yes, then I'm just a perv.
That's not the point, alright?
And then begin their battle. Iki wins and can now do whatever he wants. And who would have thought later on that this guy in the wheelchair would be the antagonist of the series and blow Rika's back out? This is the craziest character development of all time. The show has crazy good qualities. Honestly, there's so many characters I could talk about in this anime, and I'm not even joking. Like, the author made sure they were the most interactive characters possible, creating individual designs for everyone with costume changes to show their personalities, with him doing the same for one-time characters or reoccurring supporting ones. And you're probably just like, oh, Barry, that's so cap. What are you talking about? They're all so one-dimensional. And I would say to that, shut the fuck up. They're not. Let me explain. Let's start with Emily. Emily literally looks down on Iki and all his friends. Then from one incident, she literally just joins the group. And you would see her in downtime episodes all the time. Then you have Masuru. He was going to be the big bad of one of the AT gangs. But it turns out he's not so scary after all. He's literally a fucking idiot. And he was easily defeated. Then you have Benkai. You think, oh, she's just a pretty face. She doesn't do anything. Oh, you're fucking wrong. She's fucking crazy. In Genesis, she literally becomes Eraserhead plus Kakashi, teaching them and then deciding to join them slightly for helping them out for one of these AT gang fights, and is kicking niggas' asses left and right. Then she has to take on this freaking sleeping forest. Benkai is crazy. Yeah, Natsumi. Natsumi was literally the mechanic using her brain power to beat A-Tech teams all the time, and then she runs against Iki, and is like, oh, he's just gonna be another meathead. I'ma show him my boobs. And then it still doesn't work. And then what happens to her? She becomes a mechanic for the group later on. Basically just falling for Iki though. Ryu's one of the top fighters for Gorgon Shell, and you see her, you're like, oh, she's gonna be like some prim princess. No, you're fucking wrong. She's probably one of the most perverted characters in this entire show, which resulted in one of the weirdest episodes I've ever seen. Go watch it. Still, like I said, wardrobe changes and the biggest twist I've ever seen. Apparently, she's so fucking hot. She paralyzes niggas when they fight. Craziest shit I've ever seen on Kami. Then we have literally Yayo. Yayo was just down bad for Kazu for a bit. She was part of the track team, didn't really like the rest of Iki all of them that much, but didn't hate them. And then she literally becomes strong enough to just glow up and be a part of the team and actually fight with them. I don't know how the heck that happened, but that happens. Like I said, that's season 2 content that you'll probably never see. Spitfire, he's literally just British. And that him and Simka were kind of a thing, but she just left him for Iki. It was just kind of crazy how they did Spitfire like that. It's kind of crazy. Oh yeah, their homeroom teacher Mari, young, cute, inexperienced, but has to also be one of the most perverted characters I've ever seen, who does not know how to wear clothes. Interesting. Her development doesn't really change much from that, so that's the only part you can probably get me on. Oh yeah, Kyoto, the guy in charge of all the police agencies to go stop ATs, he's literally a delinquent himself. It is kind of funny. He's completely opposite of what you think he is at the beginning of the episode. He's literally just a delinquent who likes to cause problems. Oh yeah, another thing I didn't also mention, characters actually die throughout the series, or put into some real dangerous situations, or things just straight up happen to them, which looking at the show, you would not expect it to be like this. Like I said earlier, the comedy is insane, who has some of the most hilarious dubs in the early 2000s, who added in a shonen plot to go with it. And speaking of comedy, this has to be the cleanest, raunchiest comedy I've seen, which is a callback to the creator Ōgure, who before he made this series made Tenjo Tenjei, and characteristics that basically describe Ōgure's style include violent plots and female characters that provide large amounts of fan service, which was by one of his colleagues, Kai Ming-cha, who's a publisher that wrote this. His ability to weave together compelling narratives without shying away from like sex or violence has set him apart from other mangakas, while earning him a large number of loyal fans, who also wrote that his use of sex in Tenjo Tenjei is recognized by readers as an important aspect of the story, hence their outrage when it was then censored in the original English release of it. Ōgure also often includes themes of flashbacks and backstories for a lot of his stories in general, and this one's, like I said earlier, is no exception. Funny enough, he was a salary worker before becoming a mangaka, and he only started writing manga because of the prize money from a contest he saw, who had first made adult mangas and then shifted to shonen later on, eventually being one of the artists behind Bakemonogatari. A couple of his shows became animated as well, but there's no doubt about it to me that Air Gear was his actual best work. So what's the real meaning of the show? Well, as it kind of already tells you, it's to find your own road, which is on brand with a lot of other shonens and their archetypes in general, but for the entirety of the show, it's greatly pointed out that the main character Iki has people around him try to control / sway him to their side. Simka is definitely the figurehead behind this, but we can't ignore Ringo, nor can we ignore his mother / sister, Rika. They all want the young boy to follow the path they think is right, but even though they all have something they could use to sway him, they can't control him. Iki makes it clear to everyone that he'll go down his own path, his own road, and he won't follow anyone, with him oftentimes using the theme that all characters feel like they're flying when they're using ATs, feeling a freedom that they've never felt before. I want to think that all the main characters do what's in their best interests. Like Kazuma uses his ATs to help Iki, but he doesn't just simply want to follow his shadow. Onigiri has already shown us that he's willing to leave his friends if it means he's romantically happier. Both Ringo and Simka are steadfast that their ideology is right. And I can say the same thing for all the antagonists. They all form their own different teams and they want to ride it their way, with some doing it to save someone's life or because it's fun. All these antagonists and protagonists have something to prove and they want to do it their way. And I really do believe a lot of the show has so much deeper content into it. Plus, like I said, I haven't even mentioned Genesis very much, or the real members of Genesis, or the members of Sleeping Forest. Like I said, there's so much content they could really adapt into this. They had the movies, which are 3 episodes of different parts of what would be season 2, but they don't outright finish the anime or talk about the rest of the manga. With this being the era of fantasies where a team has to go off into some another world and fight a demon lord, this one doesn't deviate far from the real world. But you know, it's now all about the isekai harem worlds of overpowered leads with practically no substance of a real person, but he somehow still manages to get a girlfriend before you do. All I'm saying is a show like this can be very refreshing. If you grew up in the early days of, say, like a Yu-Gi-Oh!, a Pokemon, or One Piece, funny enough, a show about kids rollerblading and trying their best to beat the odds feels better to me, and I really do wish we got a second season of something like this animated, because the OVA, like I said, was based off of different points in the manga, and it could be rather confusing. And I know we received the episode about Ringo versus Iki fighting each other, and we have that big moment that led up to everything, but we don't know what happens right after if you're just the anime only watcher. And I know it included characters that people just watching the anime would have never known about or just seen. Those episodes were made for the loyal fans that kept reading the manga, so I get it, but still, I would like to see a full season 2 animated. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a like and tell me what you think about it. Do you want an Air Gear season 2? Do you still remember this show?